He was the face of a generation. The man behind the platinum records, the award-winning hits, the unforgettable parties, a name stitched into the fabric of hip-hop history. Sean "Diddy" Combs wasn't just a celebrity. He was an empire. But fame, as we've learned time and time again, is only one side of the story. Behind the gated mansions, the red carpets, the champagne toasts and polished interviews, there were whispers. Stories passed through inner circles, hushed, nervous, disbelieved by many. Others had heard too much, seen too much, to ever forget. Now those whispers are no longer echoing in the dark. They're being read into federal court records, relived through sworn testimony, amplified by victims whose silence has turned into bold declarations of truth. What began as quiet allegations has unraveled into one of the most disturbing criminal cases the music industry has ever faced. Federal prosecutors allege a pattern of exploitation masked by celebrity, powered by influence, and hidden in plain sight for years. The charges: sex trafficking, racketeering, coercion. The evidence: unsettling. The stories even more so. And as this high-stakes courtroom drama unfolds, another voice emerges, louder, angrier, unfiltered. Curtis "50 Cent" Jackson, rapper, entrepreneur, longtime rival, is speaking out. Not just reacting, but pointing to the past, to the moments we missed. Or maybe, the moments we ignored. He claims he saw it all coming. That the signs were always there. That the truth had simply taken too long to be believed. While you follow up on this story, please don't forget to comment, like and subscribe to this channel as more update will be uploaded soon. In the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York, case number 24-117 reads like something lifted from a crime thriller. But it's not fiction. It's real. It names Sean John Combs, known to millions as Diddy, as the defendant in a sweeping federal indictment. The charges: sex trafficking, racketeering, conspiracy, coercion, and obstruction. Legal language clinical and cold. But the allegations behind those terms speak of control, fear, manipulation, and long-term silence from people who now claim they were forced to obey. According to federal prosecutors, this wasn't about random, isolated misconduct. They allege a structured system, one built to protect the powerful and isolate the vulnerable. A machine. Investigators claim Combs used his wealth, celebrity status, and industry connections not only to maintain power, but to cover up what that power was being used for. The indictment spans over a decade. Multiple cities. Multiple victims. And more than a few people who say they stayed quiet for too long because they were afraid of what might happen if they didn't. The courtroom has now become a space where decades of silence are being tested against the weight of sworn testimony. Deonte Nash, a former stylist and longtime associate, was one of the first to break the silence in court. He testified under oath that he witnessed Combs physically assault his then-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. She didn't want to go anymore, Nash recalled. She told me. She was crying. Said she hated the freak-offs. The term, freak-offs, wasn't coined by tabloids. It came straight from the testimony. A label for private gatherings. Controlled. Highly secretive. Allegedly arranged by Combs according to multiple accounts. Cassie, once celebrated as a rising star in Diddy's orbit, offered testimony that no press release could polish. She recounted years of abuse. A relationship marked by dependency and manipulation. He blackmailed me into sex acts, she said in court. I was drugged. I was scared. It broke me. Cassie's testimony painted a picture of entrapment. Not in the physical sense but emotional. Psychological. A scenario where she believed she had no choice but to comply, or risk losing everything. She described moments when she was offered substances she didn't recognize. Times when she said no, only for her boundaries to be ignored or violated. And throughout her time on the stand, she never looked in his direction. Each word was measured. Each pause carried weight. The courtroom didn't make a sound. On May 28, 2025, Diddy's legal team filed a motion for mistrial. They claimed the proceedings had been compromised. That testimony had unfairly prejudiced the jury. That the prosecution had gone too far in implying, without evidence, that Combs destroyed potential material during the investigation. The judge, however, was unmoved. In his official ruling he stated, there was no prejudicial testimony to support the claim. The motion is denied. With that, the case moved forward, uninterrupted. Every objection, every line of defense, overruled. The defense was now forced to prepare for more witnesses, more evidence, and more press attention. And all the while Diddy sat quietly in court. Hands clasped. jaw tight. Surrounded by lawyers, cameras outside the building, and a legacy slowly being put under a microscope. What was once whispered in corridors and green rooms is now being spoken aloud in a federal courtroom. On the record. Under oath. Long before courtroom transcripts were made public, before the accusations were spelled out on federal letterhead, there was already tension. Loud, sometimes comical, sometimes deeply personal. For years, Curtis 50 Cent Jackson made a habit of speaking Diddy's name. Rarely with praise. Always with purpose. In interviews, on stage, through captions and comments, the message was consistent. He didn't trust what was happening behind closed doors. He questioned the lifestyle, the optics, the circles Diddy kept. To some, it was nothing more than posturing, hip-hop bravado stretched out for attention. Viewed for clicks. An old trick in a new media era. But to others, it was something different. A man pointing at the smoke long before anyone acknowledged there might be fire. In 2009, 2014, 2017, and again in 2022, 50 Cent alluded to things he claimed the industry chose to ignore. And each time he was laughed off, dismissed, or accused of reaching for relevance. He didn't stop. The tone shifted over time. The jokes were still there, but layered underneath was something else. A warning? Maybe. A dare? Possibly. Or a man watching the house of cards slowly shift under its own weight. What seemed like a celebrity rivalry may have been a breadcrumb trail, one scattered across nearly 2 decades. Then the stories broke. The accusations. The lawsuits. The charges. And with them came the reaction. 50 didn't just acknowledge the headlines. He stepped forward, louder than ever. What I've been saying for 10 years is now coming to light, he posted. Not as a caption buried on his page, but as a warning reposted across timelines within minutes. To some, it was vindication. Proof that he'd been speaking from a place of knowing, not gossip. To others, it looked like opportunism, jumping on a firestorm he didn't ignite but was eager to fuel. He went further, commenting on the industry, the silence, the complicity, the way entire ecosystems are built to protect the famous, no matter what happens when the doors close. They all knew, he said. No names. Just a caption. No proof. Just wait. But in a moment where words could cost millions in lawsuits or cancellations, he didn't pull back. He leaned in. The posts kept coming. Sometimes layered with humor. Sometimes raw. Always deliberate. It didn't matter if you liked him. He wasn't speaking to fans. He was speaking to history. And whether you believed him or not, you were listening. Please don't forget to comment, like and subscribe to this channel as more update will be uploaded soon. Let's forge ahead. In an age where reputation is managed in real time and public opinion shifts with a swipe, 50 Cent's commentary became more than content. It became conversation. Screenshots of his captions went viral, detached from the original posts and framed with questions. Was he telling the truth? Was he part of the problem? Was he brave or was he bitter? Reddit lit up with speculation. Twitter turned his quotes into threads. TikToks were stitched with flashbacks, timestamps, receipts. One post, a single image with a caption saying, "I told you," reached over 10 million impressions in under 24 hours. But here's the thing, behind the likes and the laughs there were patterns. Fans pointing out the interviews, the party flyers, the circles that kept repeating. The same names. The same events. The same shadows. Whether he intended it or not, 50 Cent became a kind of cultural commentator, not through op-eds or press releases, but through the weaponization of wit, memory, and timing. And the court of public opinion, just like the real one, had started taking notes. Whatever side you're on, one thing was undeniable. He had people looking in a direction they'd ignored for years. There are moments when a story becomes too loud to mute, even for those who once stood silently beside it. This is one of those moments. As the trial unfolded in courtrooms, it was also unfolding online. On timelines. On podcasts. On front pages. People who once danced to the music, wore the brands, quoted the lyrics, were now questioning what they'd once celebrated. What did they miss? What did they choose to ignore? And who paid the price for it? Comment sections turned into courtrooms. The comments weren't just about guilt or innocence. They were about how long it had taken to ask the right questions. Some called it cancel culture. Others called it correction. But one thing was clear, people were watching. And for the first time they were watching closely. Fans, critics, and insiders alike were no longer separating the music from the man. They were connecting dots, reading beyond the headlines, remembering what had once been dismissed as gossip, and asking why. Inside the entertainment industry, the ripple became a fracture. For years, Sean Combs had been a gatekeeper, power broker. If you wanted in, he had to open the door. And many were willing to look the other way to walk through it. But now, those same names were either stepping back, or being asked where they stood. A few offered public support for the alleged victims. Quiet statements. Story posts. Subtle but visible. Others said nothing, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of self-preservation. The silence was loud. There were former collaborators who began scrubbing posts, distancing their past from a man now on trial. Some said they always knew something felt off. Others said they never saw it. And yet, the proximity couldn't be denied. The parties. The jets. The endless nights blurred by access and influence. This wasn't just about Diddy anymore. It was about the system that supported him, protected him, benefited from him. A system that is now under scrutiny. Beyond the charts, the clout, the culture, this case now sits at the intersection of law and legacy. It raises questions the entertainment industry has long refused to answer. What happens when power outpaces accountability? When silence becomes a form of complicity? When entire careers are built atop other people's suffering? Federal prosecutors aren't just trying to prove one man's guilt. They're peeling back the layers of a world built on image, and challenging who gets protected when that image starts to collapse. Meanwhile, advocacy groups have reignited conversations about trafficking, abuse, and how the powerful are shielded by wealth and public persona. Laws are being revisited. Contracts are being scrutinized. Artists are re-evaluating who they sign with, who they endorse, who they trust. The courtroom is real. The stakes are real. And what happens next, inside and outside of it, may change how this industry defines accountability forever. Because once the silence breaks, it doesn't just echo. It spreads. Some stories are told through interviews. Some through courtroom transcripts. Others through what people are brave enough to say out loud. But then there are the stories that aren't spoken at all. They're hidden in hard drives. Buried in old footage. Captured on tapes no one was ever supposed to see. The story of Sean Diddy Combs, and the allegations surrounding him, may not just be remembered through legal filings or tabloid headlines. It may be immortalized in something else entirely. A documentary, pieced together from years of footage, silence, and patterns too disturbing to ignore. And the man behind it? One of the few who's been calling it out for more than a decade, 50 Cent. Curtis Jackson, known publicly as 50 Cent, has built a media empire of his own. He's produced TV shows, series, and documentaries that have explored crime, corruption, and human contradiction. But this is different. What began as commentary has now evolved into a full-scale production. A documentary, reportedly headed for Netflix, centered on the allegations against Diddy, the testimonies, and the culture that allowed it all to continue for so long. Sources close to the project say it features exclusive interviews with former insiders, legal experts, and witnesses who say they were ignored until now. It promises never-before-seen footage, reconstructed timelines, cross-referenced details from public records and sealed settlements. And it carries a tone that's not fueled by revenge, but by revelation. 50 has said publicly, this isn't about beef anymore. This is about truth. You can't erase it. In early leaked production stills, timelines cover walls. Names are highlighted. Arrows connect people, places, private flights, parties, and payments. It's not just entertainment, it's investigation. Documentaries can do what trials sometimes can't. They give the public a view behind the curtain. They follow the money. They name the nameless. They show the faces behind the stories, unedited, uncut, unforgiven. And in doing so they force people to look. To connect the dots. To decide where they stand. This isn't about proving guilt in a court of law. That's the job of prosecutors and juries. But in the court of public awareness, documentaries have become a modern kind of reckoning. And this one might be the next to shift the conversation completely. Because it isn't just about one man's downfall. It's about an entire industry's reflection. And the longer you look at it, the harder it is to look away. Back in the courtroom, the case against Sean Combs is far from over. Prosecutors are expected to call more witnesses, including former employees, associates, and at least 2 anonymous accusers whose identities remain sealed under federal protection. There are rumors of surveillance footage, wire transfers, deleted messages now recovered. His legal team is preparing new motions, including efforts to suppress digital evidence allegedly pulled from seized devices. And the public? They're watching. Not just for justice, but for answers. The kind that courtrooms don't always provide. Every appearance. Every cross-examination. Every headline now carries weight far beyond the bench. Because when a figure this big is on trial, the echoes are felt everywhere. In record labels, boardrooms, studios, and award shows. And whether the verdict is guilty or not, the question remains, how many knew, and how many stayed quiet? There's a moment, after the final statement is made, after the cameras power down, after the last tweet is posted, where silence finally returns. And in that silence, you begin to feel the full weight of what was said. And what wasn't. For decades, Sean Diddy Combs represented more than just success. He embodied a blueprint of reinvention, resilience, and unstoppable ambition. A mogul who moved through music, fashion, and business like few ever had. To the outside world he was a symbol of triumph. But symbols can cast long shadows. And sometimes, those shadows stretch further than anyone wants to admit. This case, this trial, isn't just about one man's guilt. It's about power. About what people are willing to ignore when that power entertains them, funds them, or protects them. It's about what happens when the illusion cracks. When the backstage becomes the main stage. When the stories whispered in VIP rooms and dressing rooms make their way to sworn testimony in federal courtrooms. Cassie, Deonte Nash, anonymous Jane Does. Their names and their silence were once dismissed. But now their stories are in the record. Whether believed or not, ignored or absorbed, they're here. They exist. And they're part of a much larger reckoning. As the trial moves forward, so will the questions. What did the industry know? When did they know it? And why was so much of it met with silence? Because silence has a cost. And sometimes, it buys more than time. It buys damage. 50 Cent's voice, whether you agree with his methods or not, forced that silence to break. In the loudest, most uncomfortable way possible. He didn't let the story fade. He held it up, frame by frame, for the world to see. And now, as the courtroom fights continue, the real question isn't just what happens to Diddy. It's what happens next. To the culture. To the fans. To the artists who looked the other way. To the executives who booked the shows. To the friends who knew more than they ever said. Because if this case proves anything, it's this. Behind the music, behind the empire, behind the legend, there were people. Real people. Some whose lives were changed forever. Some who may never fully speak. And if no one's listening now, what happens when it happens again? Please don't forget to comment, like and subscribe to this channel as more update will be uploaded soon. This is a developing story. More updates will follow. This isn't just news. It's history. And history always leaves a mark.